Welcome to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age, the show designed to help make middle age your prime time of life by defying the notion that once you reach 40, 50, or even 60 years old, your crowning achievements are all behind you. Regardless of whether you're just approaching 40 or firmly entrenched in your middle years, it's time to launch your very own personal journey toward a joyful and purpose-filled second half of life. Each week, host Roy Richards, an expert on midlife renewal and author of A Midlife Challenge, Wake Up, will discuss the challenges common to middle age and help guide you to a brighter tomorrow. Now, here's Roy.
Well, hello and welcome one and all to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age. Are you a leader, perhaps new in your leadership role, maybe recently promoted to C-level executive or department or division manager by your employer? Or maybe you just started up or purchased a small business. Instead, maybe you're a volunteer leader of a nonprofit, perhaps without pay at your local, regional, or national volunteer organization. Could be leader of the session in your local church or director of your favorite charity's annual fundraising campaign. And whatever your leadership role, we all know that leaders are expected to calmly take control. But what if they don't know how? What if you don't know how? And specifically, what can you do if you're in a leadership position and you lack confidence in your abilities to lead? And believe it or not, today's first guest, author and leadership expert Mark Pittman, contends that your self-doubt may actually mean that you're on the verge of greatness. And he's here to explain why and to suggest what you can do to confirm that you are an exceptional leader. And here's Mark Pittman's bio. He's CEO of the Concord Leadership Group, LLC, dedicated to executive coaching and counseling to leaders of nonprofit organizations and effective fundraising and efficient operation. He's a former pastor and church planter. Mark has helped ministries and nonprofits around the globe to fund and carry out their mission without compromising their faith or charter. And he's co-author of the popular 2017 book, Ask Without Fear, and he's author of the soon-to-be-released title, The Surprising Gift of Doubt. And hello, Mark. We're most pleased to have you here with us today on this most intriguing subject of leadership.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Well, to begin, can you please explain why you believe that self-doubt may be an important element in helping our listeners to become highly effective leaders? It seems like that's the last thing you need to succeed.
I know, right? Because our image of a leader is confidence and boldness and often brashness. But I'm not sure if your listeners had a similar experience that I had, but I maybe was advanced ahead of the curve because it was in my mid-30s. Yeah. I started wondering, is it? You know, is this all there is? There's a level of proficiency and a level of accomplishment that had happened, but there was this. I was so aware of the stuff that I wasn't good at, and so what I find that if you think of a grid, the leadership journey is like just a typical 4-quadrant grid. The vertical axis is your confidence axis. The top is where really confident, and the bottom is lacking confidence. And the cross axis is your inputs, where you get them. So when we start out learning, we start out with the external, confident and external quadrant, which I call observe. We've seen people lead, so we do this. We know we can do it. And hey, thank God, somebody finally gave us a title. They understand that we've got the goods. So we're boldly confident and doing our thing. And one of my favorite lines from leadership trainers is that if you're out leading and you turn around and there's no one behind you, you're just out for a walk. So that takes a hit at your confidence. And so that's where you move down to what I call quadrant 2, which is still looking at external cues, but it's the experiment stage. You're going to read books and listen to podcasts and radio shows and trainings and trying to figure out, you see what's wrong with you. You see things aren't working the same way it seemed to work for the bosses and the coaches and other people before. And that's where a lot of people, I think, in that middle-aged space are at. And leadership, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but leadership, I think, is not just a title. I think it's influence. So, I mean, the most menial jobs can have the greatest influence in an organization. So it's not, so this isn't just a title thing, but I think it's in that moment, in that experiment stage where things just aren't working, that the self-doubt kicks in. And it could be that you're truly broken. And I don't want to make light of that. There are good therapy is important. There are good tools for that. But I think a large number of the people that feel like they must be just totally broken because they tried getting things done and it didn't work, and they tried 7 habits and parts of it worked but not all of it, and they just keep missing different marks. And I think that's where you could be on the verge of greatness, because it could force you to look at the other cues that you've kind of been ignoring all along, which are the internal cues, the ones that, that inner voice that says, that's not really how we do things, or maybe we shouldn't do it that way, or yeah, this is great, I like this. But all the inner stuff that we're told so much in our culture to say, don't listen to, be data driven, look at the benchmarks of other groups, and where's the logic in that? So we try to drown out that inner stuff, and that's where I find the joy of the journey is figuring out that I call it quadrant 3 leadership, the analyze, where you start looking at stuff and doing what a mentor of mine long ago said: eat the chicken, spit out the bones.
Yeah. Well, if you're unsure of your leadership ability, should you confirm or try to hide your lack of confidence from those who you have been chosen to lead?
Oh, my goodness. I think that if you filled a room with a group of people, there'd be about twice as many. Everybody would have 2 opinions about this. Where I'm at right now is I was talking to a leader in Colorado who brilliantly said, I've listened to Brene Brown. I get the idea of vulnerability. I can't be that kind of leader to the 100 people that report to me. We're in a very transitional and rapidly changing space, and they want to show up every day knowing there's a job. They don't need to hear my insecurity about certain things. And so I think it's where I've been told that one of the leadership styles I've told, which has some merit, is that you throw up and you support down. So you don't spread negativity down. You put it to your boss or other people. I don't know what your experience in insurance and all was like, but for me, it's not always the employer it's not only if I'm the CEO, there's often nowhere to go. But if I'm the senior leader, my boss doesn't want to hear all especially my personal struggling with stuff. And that's where I found friends or associations, being on the boards of associations, or having a coach can be incredibly helpful, because it gives you that safe space to explore stuff and be real and verbally process, if that happens to be your style, without having the threat of getting fired hanging over your head.
Yeah, I think it's totally appropriate if you're new in a leadership role to ask your subordinates who are experts in some certain area for their opinions and support, and admit, you don't know this particular area that well, but I certainly don't think you'd go in there and say, I'm not a competent leader and you can't trust in me, because everyone wants somebody to sort of pull it together. I mean, there are very few people who can do it all by themselves without some guidance and leadership.
Well, and that's why quadrant 3 is so important. There are 3 main areas. There's about 6 areas in quadrant 3, but there's 3 main areas: is knowing your hardwiring, knowing your identity, which is the stories that you tell about yourself and you tell yourself, and then knowing how to set goals. It's a Venn diagram. So those are the 3 main areas, and the overlapping are knowing your values, knowing your personal style, and knowing your mission. When you know kind of what your values are and where your strengths are and where your limits are, you can present those strengths, you can present those limits of ignorance, which is just not knowing, it's not a bad thing, to your subordinates, and without giving up authority. I think
that's the key, I think. My next question applies not just to leaders, but to anyone at any stage of our career. How can you and I overcome past failures, real or perceived, to achieve optimum career success? Is there a magic formula for learning from past failures and using them to our advantage and moving forward positively, confident in our ability to succeed next time?
Wow. I love the way you worded that. I want to say yes, and I wish I could bottle it and give it to people. I don't have the quote exactly right, but I was just listening to a leadership talk, and the presenter said, we mistakenly think the failure defines our past instead of informing our past.
Yeah.
So there's a part,
way to put it.
isn't it? Yeah. So part of my past was planting a church, as you read in the bio.
Yeah.
We went out, we did it for 4 years, and then we ended up closing the church. We didn't reach some of the metrics that we were looking at. We had great impact on lives, but we didn't have the growth metric that we were looking at. We didn't have 100 people.
Yeah.
But there was no system for that afterwards. So it was a long struggle of trying to figure out, I must be a failure. This was my life calling. This is what I went to college to do. Am I a totally broken, inept person? Fortunately, there were two, and our system, our denominational system has nothing. They have everything for preparing new church planters, but nothing for the people that don't succeed. So we got together, my wife and I got together with two other couples that had similar experiences in the same time frame, and we started something we called Church for Losers, because we needed to. And then she got a CFL bulb, one of those energy efficient ones, and said, "We're still the light of the world." But we needed to be able to own it and say we failed. We're not failures, but that exists. That thing is. There's no making this pretty. That was ugly and horrendous, and we don't know what we're doing next. But we're okay. We're gonna get through this. I think that's part of it, is trying to separate yourself from the failure, which can be really hard. And I think that often, maybe this is your experience too, where that can often open a door to. And I'm not trying to sound all irrationally optimistic, but there can be seeds in that or parts of that experience, not only that makes you more human and better and safer as a leader, because you know that you're not invincible, but it can also help you to see different takes on ways to serve other people, or gaps in a system that you can then become the leader to help fill that.
Well, I think you were so fortunate to be able to find, you say 3 other couples or 2 other couples who had similar experience, so that you could relate to each other and talk to each other about why each of you failed, and get common or work together on what you could have done differently and all that. It's so great to have fellow failures there to help convince yourself that you're not really a failure.
And even to call you out on it too. So I think part of what we don't do with failure, and I've seen this with people that are going through job and career transitions too, whether they were chosen job transitions or job transitions chosen for them because they're no longer employed. I see people not. I find the stages of mourning to be really helpful to think about that, where you're in denial and then you get angry and just going through the grief in the mourning process. But when you have friends that are like that, or people that are in a similar experience, what we ended up doing is, I've never done drinking games through college or anything, but at those gatherings, we had, whenever one of us would say, I'm over this now, we'd all raise a glass, whether it was beer or bourbon or whatever we had in our hand, or coffee. Because we'd be like, we call each other out on our stuff, which was so helpful. Because it's okay to be wounded and hurt. But then again, it's not like I was then presenting that way to everyone. It was a safe place where I could be heard and named without, I was still doing all my other stuff. I was still having a job at the hospital that I worked at, and still doing my fundraising coaching business and all, and being what I was to other people. But I knew there was a place where I could vent and kind of let the mask down.
Yeah, that's a little bit, what your experience was a little bit similar to something I did years ago, that they have in a number of big cities, the 40-plus job search, where people who are out of work counsel each other and provide support, and they have a common office that answers your phone for you and stuff. It's really great to be together with other people in the same circumstance you're in, and help each other to find their next career. I think that sounds a little like what you were going through.
Yeah, I had a professor in college that said the thing that you're most concerned about and most scared about is the same that is common with everybody else in the room. So if you walk into a networking event and you're wondering, how do I look? Is my fly zipped? Are people going to accept me? Everybody else is worried about that too. So that rather than that becoming something that defines you as, I'm such a loser, I'm so insecure, you could be taking that as almost a divining rod, like you'd use to try to find water in a field, of saying, okay, so that's the vibe in the room. And then you can address that. You can go up, hey, Roy, how are you? You know, I'm new here. Are you new here? How does this whole thing work? And you can try to be strategically curious, is what I call it.
And it's really helpful when you really feel good when you're really helping somebody else achieve the position or the career move that they really want to make.
I bet.
Benefit along with them when they do that, and it helps your own confidence in yourself. Well, there are hundreds of books and online courses by self-help gurus and management experts that espouse the latest and greatest new leadership system. You warn it can be very dangerous to follow their advice. Why is it dangerous, and where should you turn for guidance on effective leadership techniques?
Well, I always kind of grin when I say it's dangerous to follow them. I think I'm looking at my books in my office right now where there are dozens and dozens of leadership books and goal setting books. I think where it's dangerous is that we read the book cover and we hear it change people's lives, and we know ourselves because we've experienced some level of leadership, some level of influence. We have a sense of who we are and what we're about, and so we know what we've bought the book to fix whatever is deficient, and then it doesn't necessarily work for us. And I think it's at that moment where we feel like, well, we must be broken because the testimonials on the jacket cover say it transformed people's lives. Yeah. So it must be me that's wrong. Which is silly because you wouldn't put testimonials on there that say, well, this was kind of a meh book. It wasn't that great. It regurgitated yesterday's stuff. So you only will put the great ones on there. But I think that's where the danger is that there's an invitation, that doubt of why isn't this working? And instead of moving into, that requires a lot of extrovertism, and I haven't exhibited that behavior or pattern in my life. I tend to be more of an introvert. So where are ways that I can ramp up that extrovertism, or where are ways that I can, if I need to, what can I glean from this that I can actually use? Yeah. And that's all scary because there's no boss telling you. It's when you have to make your own decisions, and there's increasingly less cover the higher you go up in leadership. As an employee, Jamie Smith of YNPN said, as an employee you learn skills and you get skill proficient, and that gives you a promotion to manager, where skill proficiency doesn't help you anymore. Yeah, because you can be good at doing the widget thing, but they don't need you to do that because now you're micromanaging. You need to be good at people skills to help people do the widget thing, but then you get promoted into leadership where people skills, it's all right to be a nice guy or gal, but you also have to have this vision and strategy and be able to look forward to see where are we going, not just what are we doing. Yeah. As you move up in that, you increasingly lose cover. You can't blame anybody else because you're the one that's making the decisions more and more with your own authority, even if it's conferred on you by an organization.
Yeah, well, here's a challenge common to failing businesses or even enterprises that they're beginning to lose their momentum. They're stuck. Employee resistance to change. Any suggestion on how you, as a leader, can motivate those who you lead to try new methods and explore new opportunities? I know that's a constant challenge for leaders.
Yeah. Well, so there's a yes, and I don't want to mitigate the challenge because there are some people that, shocking to me, don't want to learn, and I don't know what to do about that except maybe helping them by making that job career change for them.
Helping them out the door.
Helping them out the door and getting somebody else on the bus. But before that, I'm working with organizations that have gone through or are about to go through some major kind of identity-shaking change, and some that are just in a tumultuous climate, which a lot of us are, because now employment, HR people tell you if you keep an employee for 3 years, you have a winning HR system, as opposed to, there's so much fluidity. So one of the things I love helping organizations do is to get clear on what stories are being said about them now. What are the stories that are happening around the water cooler, happening in the chat rooms, happening on Glassdoor or other review sites, specifically within staff. And then one organization I was working with in Seattle said that we don't have necessarily a story about a person, but we have themes of stories. There's the disgruntled worker, and they don't care for us. They don't have our back theme. And that was really helpful. So what are the plot lines, I'd like to say, in your stories? And then what are the ones you want them to be? And because often we focus on the negative, and that is a perspective, but that perspective isn't necessarily the entire perspective. There's also good happening. And as we help focus on good, that can help people through transition. And quickly, the other one is reminding people what the end goal was.
Yeah.
Just because why are we all gathering together? And as we remember that.
Why do I keep doing the same thing every day?
Right. And the vehicles change, the tools change, but if it's still to serve the people that we're there to serve, or to conserve the land, or make an impact on the globe, it helps people have a little bit more fluidity or openness to change. I mean, there's different, if you know people styles and all, there are some people that cling to systems. You have to pry them from their dying grasp. But there are people that are more willing to trust you if you're able to continue to remind them what isn't changing.
Yeah.
What is changing and what isn't changing.
That's such helpful. A good point. Our ultimate goal is not changing, and our charter purpose and being, but we have to change to keep up with the times and to do it more effectively.
Yep.
Well, here's one more question. I know you're expert on nonprofits. I'd like to briefly call upon this expertise in counseling leaders of churches, charities, and nonprofit entities. What if a listener agrees to serve voluntarily as a leader of a session or a committee chairperson, maybe on either an ad hoc or permanent basis, and committee members of those reporting to you are unpaid volunteers with no monetary or career advancement incentives? Do you have any suggestions on how you and a leader can assign tasks to members and motivate them to actually produce results, which is often a problem in the nonprofit committees?
Oh, it is such a challenge. And I was just on a site with a client yesterday that I asked them, what about your experience in other boards? How are you getting new members and all? And there was this kind of pause around the table, and they said, it's the same people on all the boards in the community. I'm on this. And then they started kind of like taking out their baseball cards of board membership that they were on.
Some people don't know how to say no, and they get so spread out they don't really contribute much of anything.
So two things I would think of. One is I find, particularly in nonprofits, we do a horrendous job at onboarding. We usually lie to people to get them on the board. Hey, you're not gonna. It's not a lot of work, and you'll have a lot of fun. And both aren't true. Usually it is a lot of work, and it's not that much fun all the time. So helping people with the clear expectations, which is really scary, because when you start having clear expectations, you start making it easier for people to say, yeah, I'm not in for that. And you may have empty seats for a while, which is awkward, but we'll start creating a culture of people that are there for the reasons that you want them to be there for. And it helps you to figure out what you want. Oftentimes, this happens with our first hires too. When we first hire someone, we have a job description, and then we ask them to do completely different things because we realized what we really needed was over here, not what we wrote.
Yeah.
But the other part I think is I found with boards, and so I'm intrigued by the church, putting in a church context, how this seems like it could be easier to do, is I like to make sure that people know why they're there. So if it's a board, I want them to know they're there for their wallet, which is legit. But I want there to be a character or a skill set, a character trait, skill set, something else that they're bringing to the table. And I want them to know what that strength is.
Yeah, and strength has to be something they like doing and they honor in themselves so that they,
Well, that's true, isn't it? Yeah, you wouldn't say, you're really not nice to people, and I really like that. Well, maybe they like being not nice to people, I guess. But as long as I have found that with boards in particular, as they know that they can use what they're learning in other aspects of their life. I work with one of my clients does StrengthsFinder with her board, and they get so enriched by finding out more about themselves and how they're wired. They can do their board work more effectively, and it impacts their families and their work environment and all the other things that they do.
Well, let's talk about a bit about your book, The Surprising Gift of Doubt. Is that book available yet, or when will it be available?
It is. The publishers tell me that it will be available in at least a year. It's right now. It's still a ways out. I'm in development mode with it. Some of your listeners may have had this experience of I've written the book about 3 times, and now it's in a form that I like, but I need to make sure that I feel like the message is so important. I really want to steward it well and make sure the publisher sees the merit of that too. So right now, though, if they Google the Surprising Gift of Doubt, you could find a version of it that I did for nonprofit fundraisers up on YouTube. And there are articles on ConcordLeadershipGroup.com also that are exploring the different aspects of it. But I'm super excited because any author that's writing a book is probably excited about their next book. But I'm super excited about the impact that this can have to help people that are feeling stuck. They may just be looking too much at where they're stuck instead of looking at the unique gift that they are to the space that they're in.
Well, where can our folks go to keep appraised of your progress and learn when the book will be available and where they can get it? Is there a place to go now to
yeah, absolutely. One of the ways that people, if you're interested in if any of your listeners are interested in learning about even any aspect of Quadrant 3, I'd recommend going to ConcordLeadershipGroup.com/values. There I offer a values sorter. Early in my career, I had a life coach that shared with me just a list of attributes and values and asked me to identify my top values. And it was so pivotal in the rest of my career since then to know where some of my values are and understand why I have stress at some jobs, because if independence is one of my values and it's not because I'm in a bureaucratic organization, at least I've made a conscious choice. I'm not going to be able to experience independence here in the same way that I might somewhere else.
And what was that address again? Give me that address one more time.
Sure thing. It's Concord, CONCORD, leadershipgroup.com/values, VALUES.
Yeah. And
that's free for anybody that wants.
That ConcordLeadershipGroup.com is the address where people should go to learn more about your organization and perhaps retain your group for your counseling and on fundraising and organizing and managing nonprofits. I know it's full of very useful information.
Thanks. If I may, if your fundraising is particular, leadership in the context of fundraising is particularly what you're interested in, then you can go to fundraisingcoach.com. And there's a whole bunch of articles. It's one of the longest running blogs in the nonprofit sector.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, in conclusion, I think everyone who has experienced it can agree, as you put it, leadership is both an awesome and a terrifying responsibility. And perhaps for the first time ever, you are now responsible not just for your own performance, but also for inspiring the performance of those working for you. And as a leader, others depend upon you for direction, for encouragement, in some cases even for their livelihoods. And as a leader, you will face relentless demands from the boss, boards, your own staff, scarce resources, and constantly evolving technology. But never forget, leadership also can be amazingly fulfilling, and you have the honor of impacting numerous people for good, creating lasting change, and making the world, or at least your corner of it, a better place. And you have tremendous leverage with all the folks working with and for you for positive change. And if you're new for leadership, or even if you've been a leader for a while, do you feel like you've been tossed into the deep without being told how to swim? It's only natural that you lack confidence in your ability to lead. But as my guest Mark Pittman assures us, humility and self-doubt go a long way to effectively leading others. And if you want to learn why, along with advice on how to overcome self-doubt, past failures, for remarkable leadership success, I highly recommend you go to their website, ConcordiaLeadershipGroup.com, and look out for that book, The Surprising Gift of Doubt, when it becomes available. And in the interim, I suggest you explore Mark's services and learn Mark and his colleagues may have just the right solution for you and your team. And thanks a million, Mark Pittman, for your sound advice. Best of success in that book and in all that you do.
Thanks so much. It was an honor to be here.
Well, that was a most inspirational interview with Mark Pittman, wasn't it? I trust, like me, I'm certain you're now convinced that it's only natural at first to lack confidence in your ability to lead. Heck, anyone gains confidence only by experience. But that's not a fatal flaw. In fact, humility and self-doubt, as Mark points out, go a long way to effectively leading others. The key is to ask for support from those who need it, present a preliminary agenda, and build a team, but with a clear understanding that you are captain, and in no way are you shirking responsibility or running away from that duty. But you're asking others along with you as the final arbiter to help set the agenda and to accept responsibilities. Since you are a leader, formal or informal, on the job, at home, or in your church or community, whether formally designated leader or not, I would argue that every one of us has a leadership role in some form, in some part of our daily lives, if only as a leader in your family. And before we go, I'd like to call attention to a book all about leadership. In fact, recreating and re-energizing stagnant, underperforming, or lagging enterprises midstream. Also startups who are establishing their mission and place in the market. And it's my second book, Wake Up, Captain and Crew, Restart Your Engines, by Roy C. Richards. I wrote the book from the premise that sagging or brand new enterprises, including small businesses, large corporations, and nonprofits, are best transformed by reigniting the creative energy and collective spirit of the men and women presently on board. No matter how outstanding is your products or services, your infrastructures, including your reputation and your production facilities, a collective enterprise's primary asset is the combined talent, knowledge, and energy, creativity of those on board. And my book then presents a five-fold formula designed to establish or restore positive momentum. 1, early diagnosis and treatment of the symptoms of stagnation or decline. 2, identification and evaluation of collective strengths, traditions, and resources upon which to build. And this is a top-to-bottom collective process. 3, inspirational exercises to revitalize both the personal lives and the careers of onboard participants, employees, or volunteers to define what they really like to do and what their real objectives and goals are in their lives. Then 4, merging of individual and collective goals and objectives into a fully engaged circles of cooperation, both individual areas, functions, and the enterprise as a whole. And 5, empowerment, including reward for every dedicated and capable contributor who performs well and aids the project. And my book contains 15 chapters of detailed advice and self-help exercises and also case studies to guide you through the entire step or the stages of collective renewal. And the book is intended not just for C-level executives, but for anyone who is new or intends to assume intends to assume a leadership role, be it department manager, project supervisor, or maybe committee chairperson, I should say. We don't want to single out the sexes. And once again, the book's title is Wake Up, Captain and Crew, Restart Your Engines by me, Roy C. Richards. You'll find it on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or through our website, MiddleAgeRenewal.com. And thank you all for tuning in. It's great to talk to you every week about the challenges and potential high rewards of middle age, your best age. And come back again next week for another episode. For now, enjoy spring, and bye for today.
You've been listening to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age, hosted by Roy Richards, an expert on midlife renewal and author of both A Midlife Challenge, Wake Up, and Wake Up, Captain and Crew, Restart Your Engines. You can learn more about Roy and his Middle Age Renewal Training System by visiting his website, middleagerenewal.com.